A Gold Cup contender, the Trainers' Championship early skirmishes, and some Paddy Power fancies at Cheltenham coming your way on this week's edition of The Front Page. Hello there and welcome along to this week's edition of The Front Page. We've got a real jam-packed show to get through for you. First up, have we seen Britain's best Gold Cup contender? Perhaps he was out last week at Newbury. We're going to talk about that. As well as Dan Skelton, he's been on the march, including with a Haldon Gold Cup victory, while his old boss, Paul Nicholls, well, his fortunes continue to ebb and flow. A treble for him on West Country weekend at Wincanton. We've also got the Melbourne Cup to look back on, as well as some walkover discussion from the past week. There's been 3 of them within a short space of time. So for today's show, I'm your host, Maddy Playle, and I'm joined by our West Country correspondent on the line, James Stevens, and in the studio, our Lambourne correspondent, Liam Head. Folks, plenty of action from both those areas this week, but I want to start off with Haiti Couleurs, the National Hunt Chase winner and the Irish Grand National winner from last season. Made his reappearance over hurdles at Newbury. Wasn't expected to win, but he did. How surprised were you by that first up, Liam?
Yeah, I was a bit surprised. I think even Rebecca Curtis was surprised at how well he won in the end. I think she was using that race as a sort of a prep run for certainly the Coral Gold Cup at Newbury back there in a couple of weeks. So I think the manner in which he won was quite interesting, really, considering he'd won. He showed a lot of improvement. He won off 135 over hurdles at Newbury last season, so I think he was off 145 there today. So at that day, so yeah, it was surprising, but it was a very good performance. It'll be interesting to see what they do with him now.
It will. I did a poll after the race. Well, what would you do with him? Because there's plenty more rain in the Haydock area for the Betfair Chase. He is a 7-2 shot for that race on November 22nd. Or they've got the race that Liam mentioned, the Coral Gold Cup on November 29th, for which he's 10-1. He'll be racing there if his chase mark of 152. So do you go for the nice big handicap prize and try and eke out some mileage off that mark? Or do you go for the Grade 1, which could suit him better? James, what do you think?
Well, I think firstly, the Coral Gold Cup would be my target with this horse, because I feel he's an improving handicapper and he's still on a mark which he can be competitive off. I mean, the other aspect to this horse which hasn't quite been discussed is that it was the first winner of the season for Rebecca Curtis. Her form hasn't been good all season, so the fact this horse, who clearly wasn't going to be right for this day, has gone and won suggests he's potentially very, very smart horse and definitely a big Gold Cup contender this season. But B, you might just want to wait a little bit longer till the yard really starts to pick up form, because whether it's a Betfair Chase or a Coral Gold Cup, you're going to need to be hitting top form to be winning those races. But thrilled to see this horse come back. I mean, last season I was scratching my head looking at the Gold Cup market thinking, crikey, what on earth is going to come through and challenge the front 2 from last year? I mean, Lecky Watson won the novice chase, the 3 mile novice chase, and you'd have to say he's not the sort of horse you're looking at going, well, he's definitely a Gold Cup contender. You look at the British novice chases from last season, well, we know Caldwell Potter's not going to come through the ranks. It's all about Haiti Couleurs, really. So I'm really glad to see him win. And as well, Maddy, it's great to have a Welsh horse leading the way.
Of course it is. Contributing factors to where he may go. Well, Sean Bowen and his availability is one. People are suggesting that he's unlikely to be available to partner him at Newbury, so that could sway them towards Haydock and the Betfair. And also, as I touched on before, the ground. Likes soft conditions, likes the stamina test, and apparently the ground is going to be softer at Haydock, but we'll wait and see on that front. It seems like Rebecca Curtis is favouring the Betfair Chase at the moment, perhaps due to that weather, but we'll see how things play out. Now, could he even go to the Grand National? Well, we're mentioning big handicaps, and there's not a single one bigger than the big one in April. William Hill have stumped up a £500,000 bonus for any horse that can win the Beecher Chase December the 6th, the Classic Chase on January the 10th, and the Grand National Trial on February 14. Now, bearing in mind this is the same amount of prize money that you get for winning the Grand National, this is going to be a pretty big incentive for horses to try and do 1 or 2 of the doubles, although it's not a win and you're in. Do you think it's going to encourage someone like Willie Mullins to send horses over and try and net some more quid, James?
Yeah, quite possibly. It makes the way you campaign a horse towards a Grand National a lot more straightforward, because you're going, we could win this race, or we could win this race and potentially win 500,000 more. It's a bit of a no-brainer, and from an owner's perspective, it's clearly obvious. So it's a very clever way William Hill have made their own races more appealing without necessarily improving the prize money of those races. It's more towards the Grand National, and actually, if you look at how history goes, there's not many years they would have to pay out. So it's a very clever move from a gambling firm. I'm a bit disappointed it's still not winning you in. I know it's not really their jurisdiction to decide that, but it is frustrating when you look at these trial races, especially now the Grand National is fewer runners than we had in previous years. And after these races, you love to get excited. Is this horse a Grand National contender? Could this be the one? Could this be the horse? And actually you're going, well, it depends how many Willie runs, and then if Gordon runs this, and you're just thinking, God, you can't really even get excited about when these horses win a race because of how few runners there are in the race now. So, yeah, it's a great initiative. Definitely it will appeal to Willie Mullins, but there could still be that little bit more.
Yeah, petition to get Mr. Van Gogh in this season's Grand National somehow, and also petition for there to be an almighty downpour on the eve of the race. The Irish have just been totally dominant in the Grand National, winning 7 of the last 9 runnings. The 2020 renewal, of course, wasn't to be due to COVID. It's going to take something to stop that sort of dominance, don't you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we've just seen the calibre of horses that have come over from the other side of the Irish Sea to dominate that race, certainly from 1 yard in particular. So I think anything that Willie Mullins sends over is naturally going to be certainly at the front of the market.
Yeah, and are you with Haiti Couleurs of the Brits? I mean, we ran a poll, so we'll try and get that on screen for you now. Who do you think's got the best chance in the Gold Cup? Of course, I know the way you're thinking, Galop and Deschamps, they lead the way, but what do you make of the Brits?
I think it's, as James touched on earlier, it's exciting to see, at this stage of the season, Britain have what appears to be a genuine Gold Cup contender. Obviously, we're very much still a long way away from that race, and a lot of boxes have to be ticked before Haiti Couleurs does take his chance in the race. I was speaking to Rebecca Curtis after Haiti Couleurs' win at Newbury on Thursday, and she believes that he is a Gold Cup horse. But I do think that certainly out of the front 2 that we've seen last year in I Know The Way You're Thinking and Galop and Deschamps, I think I Know The Way You're Thinking is the one that they all have to beat. I just think that the way in which he won the race last season was just really, really imposing, and to put 6 lengths on a top class horse in Galop and Deschamps is just was so incredible. I mean, I think another sort of contributing factor to this is the fact that Galop and Deschamps will be 10 next year. I think you have to go back to 1998 to find the last 10-year-old to win this race. So it's a stat that very much doesn't work in the favour of Willie Mullins. But if anyone can do it, Willie can.
He can. He's got the world at his feet. I know the way you're thinking. So is Haiti Couleurs, mind you. How great that trainers and owners are showing that ambition, that he could be a Gold Cup and a Grand National horse. That's what we need to get excited about. And hopefully he can give us plenty to shout about the rest of the season. Another horse with all the potential in the world ahead of him is Thistle Ask, who was a shock winner to some, although he's very well backed in the market, of Friday's Haldon Gold Cup at Exeter. Caliph de Burley was sent off the short price favourite after Paul Nicholls described him as one of the best 2-mile chases he's had in a long time. But it wasn't to be. Dan and Harry Skelton teamed up with their tearaway frontrunner, who jumped beautifully en route to a deeply impressive success. The favourite only 4th. James, there was some momentum behind this. He was £5 out of the weights, but the betting told you that he had a good chance.
They certainly did, and I think we're still at the time of year where fitness is very, very important. And if you look at the front 2 home, the winner of a race, Thistle Ask, had 2 runs. The second, Sansegal, had 1 run. The rest of them hadn't had a comeback run. So fitness was a key aspect in this race. But as many of you may have read in the newspaper today, I really think front running was the secret to the success of West Country weekends, so to speak. There was Badger Beers on Saturday as well as Dorian Quest beating Quebecois. Harry Skelton's ride. The piece I've written essentially bemoans the phrase, oh, well, he stole the race on Thistle Ask, and it was stolen as if he did something wrong and it was unjust. Actually, it was a fantastic bit of riding. Down the back straight, he really just quickened away, really powered his horse into the jumps, got clear, and yeah, won with every bit in hand. And it was a hugely impressive performance from a horse who's won 3 races in 13 days. It's quite an achievement. And look, it was a brilliant bit of riding to be able to kick clear when he did, to gain an advantage gradually on the downhill part of the track, and essentially put the pressure on Khalif de Burle and JPR on their comebacks and say, right, you guys are going to have to be fit because you're going to have to chase me. This big advantage uphill. Fantastic bit of riding from the Skeltons. How good Thistle Ask will be, I don't know. I did sort of wonder in the back of my mind. He's had quite a few runs in quite a few days. The handicapper's certainly going to have his say and such. But look, they've won a lot of money, and this is what the Skeltons are doing so well, is they're getting horses. This horse cost 10 grand, was moved to the Skeltons at the start of this season. They've won 100 grand, including a big race. This is why Dan Skelton will be champion trainer, is what the owner said after the race, and it's hard to go against him the way he's going at the minute.
Yeah, ballsy placing, wasn't it, to go for such a big pot with a horse. Some topics I want to touch on here, Liam. The first one is Skelton is just on his march, isn't he? I mean, do you think he'll be champion trainer this season?
I think from what we've seen so far this season, I think he will be. I just think that he just seems to have gone up another notch, and I think that's what you want to see from a trainer who's agonisingly come close on a couple of occasions. Obviously, last season. He's be the first to admit it would have been hard on him and the team, given how well they had of a season. I mean, to yield over $3 million in prize money and not win a championship, at sort of 90% of the seasons in the past, that would have been enough to win. I think obviously a lot will come down to what happens in the the likes of the Gold Cup, the Grand National, where the prize money is elite, and it sort of it sways the direction of the championship. So, but in terms of what has happened, he just seems to get everything right at the minute. And if he can continue that momentum going into this part of the season now, which is crucial, obviously we've got Cheltenham returning the weekend. We've got sort of these Paddy Gold Cups. We've got these big races to come between now and Christmas. I think if he can tick off a few more Grade 1s at the top level, then I think he's got a massive chance.
Yes, certainly has. Stay tuned for some November meeting tips later on in the show. Dan Skelton going from strength to strength. Paul Nicholls, bit of a mixed time of things. Had the defeat of Khalif de Burle, who he compared to Frodon and Clan de Zobo. Do we think he can hit those heights? And also, as James mentioned, Quebecois was beaten in the Future Stars Silver Bowl to a Skelton horse in Doyen Quest. Then the momentum did gather on Saturday when Cantoni had a treble, but his leading lights, Blue King, Daru, Rubo, they look quite laboured. What do you think Nicholls has to do to really threaten Dan Skelton now there's been this switcheroo with his old pupil, James?
Yeah, I would just touch on. I thought Blue King Daru. I would suggest he was a little bit better than Rubo. Rubo won possibly the worst race, a graded race I've seen in a long time. It was an absolutely dreadful race, the Elite Hurdle, and it's a real contrast to the Kingwell Hurdle, which was the repeat of the Champion Hurdle a month later, with Golden Ace beating Burdett Road. I thought Blue King Daru was. I just think he needs further. So I definitely wouldn't write him off at all. What does he need to do? Well, he needs a lot more top quality horses, and they are hard to find and they are hard to come by. I think Paul Nicholls always places his horses extremely well. And if you look at who has come through from ditch sheet training ranks, Dan Skelton, Paul Nicholls was on the opening show and said, I've almost trained these trainers too well. And Anthony Honeyball was another one. He won the Badge of Beers on Saturday. Yeah, you can see the way that they target train. It's almost like they've really inherited that ability that Paul Nicholls has, and he does get the very best out of these horses. I mean, if we're looking at from a perspective of champion trainer, Paul Nicholls was won an 80 grand race with Roubaud, who was over fences last year, who is not potentially going to win a group Grade 1 hurdle because there's better horses than him, but he still won a Grade 2 odds of 1-8. I mean, that's a fine bit of placing, isn't it? But everyone else should be looking at that race going, why haven't we got one in there? But yet he finds that race and he goes and wins that race. He needs top quality horses. They are hard to buy. They're hard to come by. there's a lot of potential ones in that yard. It's just a case of taking that next step, and they do need time. And things do. This is jump racing. Horses don't just burst onto the scene like they do on the flat. It needs time. It needs patience. But inevitably, it is going to turn around. There are swings and roundabouts in racing all the way through history. Paul Nicholls will be back winning Gold Cups one day. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. And there's been some changes at Ditchit as well. Megan Nicholls, his daughter, is going to be sourcing a lot more of the horses. Last season it was quite sticky, lost a couple of owners, but he's got some new ones in this year. So we'll see how things transpire for the rest of the season for Paul Nicholls. Before we go on to some international racing earlier on in the week, I want to touch upon the weather, as it's been blamed for some of the small fields. We've now had 3 walkovers in the space of 5 days. There was one at Newbury on Thursday, Sandown on Sunday, and Kempton later today. As we record on Monday, there's another, all over fences. The weather has been blamed, Liam. You were at Newbury. Do you think it's only down to the fact that we haven't got rain, or is it due to this new racing excellence, new series, new initiatives, more of the races being changed from handicaps?
I think it's the weather. I think these new races, the beginners chases, were introduced for young horses to give them the experience that they need. I know Jamie Stone touched on it at Sandown on Sunday. The races are there for anyone, any horse going over fences that needs experience, especially the younger horses. You know, they'll learn an awful lot in these races first time out. You know, where it's an opportunity to try things and see what works, see what doesn't work. I think that the problem that everyone is having up and down the country is the weather that we've been having. It's been an unprecedented few months. We've had one of the driest summers in a number of years, and I just think that's contributing to the fact of the field sizes, the walkovers that we've been seeing. You know, obviously a lot of these horses going over fences will probably want soft ground, you know, to a bit of ease underfoot to get the toe in it and get used to sort of the jumping. But on quick ground, you know, it's really hard to do that. I know Gary Moore took it, his horse Salva out of Sandown on Sunday, you know, because of that, because he you know, running a horse,
and he is quite a ground dependent horse, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. And running a horse on ground that they're not suited by can do an awful lot of damage, and a lot more damage than people actually think. Obviously it's not great to see. You know, Newbury had their first jumps meeting on Thursday, and the first race was a walkover. Sandown was the same on
should they just be watering?
Well, it's difficult because you could say, right, that nobody knows. The weather forecast is the weather forecast. Nobody knows how quickly it can change. Clerk of the courses have got arguably one of the hardest jobs in racing, because
Indeed.
if they don't water and it stays dry, they get a lot of flack for not watering. But if they water and then the rain comes, you know, when there's been a sustained period of dryness, the water will just sit on top of the ground and it'll just start to flood. And we've seen in the past that some clerk of the courses have made an executive decision and done one or the other, and regardless of what they've done, they can't win. So I just think this is all down to the ground. I think from a racegoer's perspective, it's obviously not great to see. You know, you go to the races, you want to have a bet, you know, you want to see the value and stuff, but you know, all of a sudden these 7 race jumps cards are turning into 6 races, and as well as that, we're seeing horses from the remainder of the card also coming out due to the ground. So I think the lack of numbers we're seeing at the minute is solely down to the weather.
Okay, although it is unsatisfactory for racegoers though, isn't it, James? In that piece from Sandown yesterday, I mean, I was considering going to Sandown, had a look at the fields and just thought, I'm just not going to make the effort. And I know a lot of people will be in the same boat. Racegoers saying, you know, they paid in advance on anticipation that there were going to be big fields and it was going to be a great day, and that wasn't delivered. What can be done, do you think?
Well, I think this is an issue which really frustrates me, because you hear all the time trainers will tell you, well, we can't find races for these horses, and then you go and see quite a few walkovers and you begin to think, right, okay, there are races there, you've just choosing not to use them. Now, this series is particularly interesting because there was a change a few years ago to create more novice handicap chases, and for a lot of trainers, that was a good initiative and a good move, because there's a lot of horses who are in that 120, 130 bracket who might not necessarily want to be taking on horses rated 150 plus, because if they go and run well, or indeed win, then the handicapper is going to hit them. A really good example of that was at Cheltenham last meeting, which was Leave of Absence, who beat Pied Piper, who travelled into the race looking like he was going to win and found absolutely nothing, as we have seen throughout his career. Leave of Absence beat him and got a £14 hike from the handicapper, which is extremely a big jump, and that now has ruled him out of the Coral Gold Cup, because the trainer Anthony Honeyball is there going, I mean, he's going to win. So these new races are perhaps have come in quite aggressively back, and there's a lot of them there, on top of a lot of graded novice chases and quite valuable and prestigious races, which are also more exciting options because they're winnable races, as we well know at this time of year. So there's quite a lot of races which we already know. We know trainers are perhaps a lot more cautious than they used to be regarding ground and conditions, as they were, say, 20, 30 years ago. And there's truth in that. You know, I can certainly see everything Liam said, and trainers are cautious, and they're right to be cautious. As their horses, they have to do what they feel is right for their horses. So I completely understand that. But previously, in years gone by, people will look at yesteryear and go, well, trainers were never afraid of the ground and such. It's just the way the game has evolved, and I completely understand that. But the other thing this highlights, and it goes back to what we have talked about so often on the show, is there's just so few very good horses around in Britain anymore. I mean, they are all really in William Hunter's yard. There's so many good horses we used to see from different yards. We'd be going into Cheltenham and going, okay, well, this trainer's got 5 really exciting horses and 3 of them are going to run at Cheltenham, and this trainer's got 10 and 2 of them are going to run at Cheltenham. The quantity of quality horses is really quite scary at the minute. And you look through the novice events at Cheltenham come the COVID year and the years after, this isn't a surprise for anyone. The writing was on the wall that actually the main top tier of a potential top class pool of horses are in so few hands and so many of them in Ireland. It is pretty scary, but at the same time, we knew this was coming, and it's just being proved into fruition.
And could it get even worse? It's a horrible thought, but there's been few real meaningful calls of the fixture list in recent years, and there just aren't the horses to satisfy. I'm sure that's another contributing factor to why there's been so many walkovers, although I do take the point that there's been exceptional circumstances with the weather. Now, I promised that we'd have a look back on the Melbourne Cup. It was won by Half Yours, who completed a Cups double, having won at Caulfield the time before under Jamie Mellon, formerly known as Jamie Carr. She became the second woman to win the race after Michelle Payne. This was a really impressive victory, really stamped his authority on the field. There were some great runs by Euros in behind, notably Goody Two Shoes, who finished second for Joseph O'Brien. He just loves that race, doesn't he? And it was a real brilliant success. There's lots of feel-good energy behind the victory, I thought, Liam. And an Australian-bred horse winning the race, I don't think many would have said that would happen beforehand.
No, absolutely not. I think it was just a great story for the sport, great story for Australian racing as well. As you touched on there, the winning jockey Jamie obviously winning the Caulfield and the Melbourne Cup. So all in all, a good success for the home soil. Definitely.
And there's been plenty of coverage out down under, James, some from our own Lee Mottershead, who's written about the amazing atmosphere. I thought I was watching one of the sprint races, I can't remember the name of it now, but won by Giga Kick just the other day, and it was pouring with rain at Flemington, and the crowd just seemed to be absolutely loving it, love getting stuck in, love their racing, love having a bet. And someone who's really been embraced out there is the racing blogger. He has been taken over there to help promote the sport, I guess, and the coverage he's been getting has been pretty amazing. Been to Chris Waller's stable, of course, who trains Via Sistina, who was another Group 1 winner over the weekend. That star mare, still going strong in Oz. But the racing blogger, are you for him or against him? He's a little bit like Marmite in racing circles, but he's certainly proved very popular over there.
Yeah, it certainly is extremely popular, and the numbers on social media really tell a story, and they don't lie. Look, from the perspective that I have, is that my job is essentially more people are interested in horse racing, more people read the stories I write and watch the things that I do, and if he's going to put more eyes on the sport, then that's great. I think he highlights what can be done with social media in racing. British racing has the worst approach for social media than any other jurisdiction you will find. Media rights make things so difficult to do on racecourses. I work on the HMPA as well. It's such a big issue we have because there are so many companies and so many individuals who'd like to do so much on course, but we are so restricted by media rights. Racing Blogger does his content through his own way and his own channels and whatnot. He's not under any accreditation, so it makes it a little bit more different. And he does have a real brand. You know, he's got a voice, and I think what he has is he's built up a character that a lot of people can resonate with. He's a punter. He's a racing fan. He gets the highs and the lows of what winners are like, and I think that what he has is quite refreshing because you watch racing TV channels and it's a lot of ex-jockeys. It's a lot of people who have families within the game, and this is somebody who's completely outside of it, and I feel that he is quite appealing. And some of the appeal of this guy is that he is so different to what you see on the TV. To go out there to get the coverage he's got, I mean, full credit to him. You know, the Australians seem to have really warmed to him. I would like to see lots more influencers. We know how big influencers are at the minute. You look at sports like football. I mean, the Man United influencer Andrew Ginger's Angry Ginger, I think his name is favourite to win I'm a Celebrity. You've got George Clark, who's favourite to win Strictly, and I've got him at 9-1. Happy days. But these influencers have such a pull, and they're so important to young sports fans at the minute. And racing is so slow to get them because our media rights policy is so restrictive. So we want more of this sort of content, but British racing has to change, as we say so often in this show.
Do you think we're a bit stuck in the dark ages?
I think in some ways, but I think James has touched the nail on the head. Like, it doesn't seem right that the racing blogger can go to Cheltenham Festival and record everything from being in the parade ring to speaking to trainers or jockeys, and then filming races, and then, you know, like you said, that media companies can go to, for example, go to Cheltenham and places, and we're not allowed to do any filming inside the track. So there is some restrictions that obviously that should sort of be loosely cleared up, kind of thing, because I mean, at the end of the day, we're all trying to promote the sport in as the best way we can, and at the end of the day, that's what we want to do. We want to get the eyes and ears on the sports. Now, obviously, someone like the racing blogger has captivated this audience and a new audience into the sport because he's so present on social media, and he's getting more people into the sport, and a lot of first-time race goers will know who he is because of the numbers that he has on social media. It's very different to what we've sort of been used to the last 15, 20 years.
Do you think that's why people don't like him? Because it's just something different and in your face and very confident. Do you think that's why?
Yeah, I mean, I think he has a very different way of getting news out there, as opposed to, you know, me or you or James, you know, the journalist. Like, we would like to try and, sometimes we can't get hold of trainers on the track because they're tied up, or, you know, we try and ring trainers or jockeys before races to get quotes and stuff. And then you'll go on social media and you'll see it could be the racing blogger, it could be another sort of content creator / influencer who has got the news, who has sort of broke the news. And, you know, we've seen it in the past where a lot of these influencers have broke news and there's been an embargo on a story, and
Okay.
You know, said companies have had to wait for a certain time to produce content, whereas other people have got it straight out there. And listen, that's the evolving change of social media these days. Like, you know, as we've seen, for the good and the bad, anyone can say anything on Twitter, or X as we call it now, whenever they want. So I think there needs to be a sort of a fine line between the journalist and the content creator. But I just think it's the way that the sport's going. I mean, the more we can show our sport to the outside world, the better.
I wonder.
Yeah, and just to follow up on something Liam said there, Maddy, is there's a saying you always hear within racing, and particularly which is informed to young jockeys, is that you should work hard and keep your head down. By keeping your head down, that's really out of the limelight, that's out of the spotlight. What racing bloggers very differently to that is he's not that at all. He's always keen to put himself out there. He's got an opinion, he'll express it. You know, he has one of the things I quite like that he's done is he's really put the pressure on hotels in Cheltenham, which I'm on the front page. We've got to talk about hotels in Cheltenham. We'll get onto pint prices soon. Is that he's really put a bit of pressure on that and really drawn a lot of attention to that because it's something he feels passionate about. And also, he's on the ground. He's speaking to a lot of racegoers, and I'm sure, as I know from being in Cheltenham and speaking to a lot of racegoers, it really is a big issue. So there's another angle that he has is that he's on the ground. He's speaking to a lot of racegoers, so he is getting a real feel of what people are feeling, and I think that's a really really impressive aspect to what he offers is that people feel he's very representative of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of Cheltenham now, let's have a chat about the upcoming November meeting starting on Friday. Have we got any tips? Let's have some loose discussion around the Paddy Playle Gold Cup, which is at 2:20 on Saturday. I'll run you through some betting I've just got in front of me here. Jaguars, the 4-1 favourite, 9-2 Il Ridotto, 7-1 Vincenzo, 8's coming up easy for Henry de Bromhead, the same price Dan Skelton's 2, Panic Attack Risk in the ground, 10-1 Bad, Colonel Harry, the same price. We saw him, of course, winning at the weekend at Aintree with the company sergeant, Gidley Park 12s with the jukebox man, and 14's Bar. James, I'm sure this won't be the first time you're looking at this race. Who is your eye drawn to at those early stages?
Yeah, absolutely love the Paddy Playle Gold Cup, Maddy. One of my favourite races of the year, and always an intriguing race with a view to the future because you sometimes get those horses that could be horses going into Grade 1s. You've got horses that potentially could be those for those series of 2.5 mile handicaps over at Cheltenham for the rest of the season, including the big one, the Plate at March. And this year's lineup, there's a lot of intrigue in there because you've got a former winner in Il Ridotto setting a good standard, but you've got a lot of potential horses, and that's what I love about this race. It's second season chasers, it's horses that you're always looking at, and the one I was drawn to from a betting angle, and my form is dreadful, I think the only winners I've had have been in those walkover races, was Conyers Hill, Paul Nolan's horse, who has just caught the eye a little bit, looks potentially good, a bit of an eye-catching second last time. We know what the Irish can do in these big handicaps. Was 6th in the Grand Annual last year, and to be honest, looked like he was outpaced all of the race, and looks near like this is his trip, and the way he ran last time suggests that would bring him on massively. He's going to be towards the bottom of the weight. It's not certain to get in, but I'm pretty hopeful he will. Bit of a big price, 16-1, I think, so he'd be the one I'd be looking at. Fascinating to see how this betting market evolves through the week because this is a race which is always subject to a gamble. Great week at Cheltenham, brilliant, can't wait for it.
Me neither. I'm there and I can't wait to get stuck in. This race is going to have some developments. A couple of horses that I mentioned probably aren't going to run. Colonel Harry, one of them, we saw him out at Aintree winning. Gidley Park, another, the jukebox man, might not make it either. I've got my eye on one at a big price, and it's going to depend on what Dan Skelton wants to do and whether he wants to run the top weight protectorate, because my horse is going to struggle to get in if he does, and that's Ho Jolie Smoke, who was so eye-catching at the showcase meeting over further. I think if they step him back to this trip, I think he could be a real force to be reckoned with. At about the 20-1 mark, Liam, who are you drawn to?
I think Bad's a decent price for Ben Pauling.
Okay.
I think he's around 10-1 at the moment. It's been well documented how well the yard and the jockey Ben Jones has been in. I think this horse is sort of tailor-made for this race as an early season target. He won very well first time out at Kempton the last day. That was a career best performance, and he's won over this 2.5 mile distance a couple of times last season, so I think he's going to shape with tons of improvement from last month's win, and I think he can run another big race.
The first two in the Welsh Champion hurdle go in the 3:30 on Sunday. It's the Greatwood hurdle. Celtic Dino and Alexi, the latter runner-up at Chepstow, but since went on to win at Ascot. Celtic Dino 6-1, Alexi 7s with Willful. 8's Mirabad, the Skeltons quite fancy him, I'm informed. 10-1 Stick to the Plan for Ollie Murphy. 12s is Give It To Me OJ Durancon. Reckless Eric, 14-1 Bar. James, have you got any insight you can give us on the Greatwood this year?
I do actually, because Joe Tizard's stable tour is out on Thursday. We talked about Alexi quite a bit, and he also got a phone call from Sam Thomas where they were discussing their various handicap weights after Alexi had won at Ascot. So it was interesting to see how they both really sort of fancied their chances, but they were giving nothing away in that phone call. So I found that quite an interesting share. bit of insight into how these big races unfold. The horse I like, though, is Gibbs Island, who also ran at that Chepstow Welsh Racing Festival and won very impressively. Now, Tom Lacey's form was a little bit in and out last season, but he certainly seems to have started this season well, and Gibbs Island was very impressive at Chepstow. One of his performances before he was a bit underwhelming in the Triumph, didn't quite perform at Aintree, but that's how high they rated him. They wanted to chuck him in the Grade 1s. He beat Give It To Me OJ by 6 lengths at Haydock on his start before those Grade 1s, which suggests he is a very, very quality horse. He'll love the ground. He just looks made for these big handicaps. He's towards the top of the weight, so he's going to have to put in a big performance, but I just think he's definitely a bit of value with a yard in such good form.
Just a 4-year-old. Exciting times for Gibbs Island and his team, Liam. Any fancies in the Greatwood?
I've not sort of had a sit down through the race and looked at it in depth, really. I think there's a certain race on Friday that's sort of more up my street.
Go on.
The Schleur Chase.
Yeah, it's going to be a cracker, isn't it?
Yeah, so excited to see John Bond back out. I think he's just such a world-class horse, and I don't think he gets the respect he deserves. I think a lot of people touch on the fact that he's not won at the Cheltenham Festival before, and he doesn't go around Cheltenham, but he's going for an unprecedented third Schleur Chase 8 in a row at Cheltenham. Nicky Henderson's going for a record-extending 5th win in the race. I just think this horse is just
box office, isn't he?
I just think he is. I just think he's had 23 races. He's won 18 and finished second 5 times. So he's not finished outside the first 2. There's not many horses around that have a record like him. And I just think he's in for another exciting season for the yard.
Yeah, he's going to be a big draw on Friday's card. Let us know who you're fancying for the big races at Cheltenham, and indeed what you think of our talking points on this week's show. A quick reminder, in front of us here on the table in today's Racing Post, you can get Dan Skelton's stable tour. So I'm going to have a look through that in just a moment to see if I can get any guesses as to where he's going to run his Paddy Power Gold Cup candidates. So that's all we've got time for today. Thanks to Liam, thanks to James, and we'll see you again in a week's time.